Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me today at what I hope is going to be an incredibly interesting and enlightening conversation between two candidates for the 22nd District State Senate seat in Michigan. Did I get that right, guys?
You did?
Yes.
Awesome. So I have with me today Jon Elgas, who's the Libertarian candidate for this seat, and Genso, who's the Democratic candidate for this seat. And I'm going to, at the outset, just let everybody know that our goal here is to have some informed, intelligent conversations and not have pot stirring, anger, I don't know. Politics right now, it seems, and I run into this in my day-to-day, seems wrought with people just getting mad at each other and only talking about, and we were kind of talking about this before the show started, what I find is politics in the news tends to focus on extremism that makes people mad. And my reality, my day-to-day, is people are never that far apart, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm going to start, if you don't mind, by having you guys introduce yourselves. You're going to do a far better job than I would. And then we'll start talking about some topics.
Great.
Okay. Do you want to go first, Jon? Who are you?
Okay, so I'm Jon Elgas. I work in a factory here in Brighton. Single, got 7 nieces and nephews that I love spending time with, and the strange hobby I have is beekeeping.
Is it that strange? Beekeeping's kind of trendy.
My family kind of made fun of me when I started, so which I don't blame them for doing.
So have you run for office before?
Yes, this is my 4th time. I ran against Lena, incidentally, in 2016 for her representative seat, and I ran twice for Wayne State Board of Governors.
Okay. Have you won an election yet?
No.
Okay.
Not as a libertarian, so...
Okay. So you've run under different parties.
No. I've only run those 3 times, and
As a libertarian every time.
yes.
So what drives you to seek public office?
Well, the main thing for me is getting my message out, and for me, libertarianism is generally accepting people's differences and saying, "Hey, you got the right to do that, even though I may disagree with your actions."
Got it.
That's one of the reasons why I like them.
All right. And Jordan, who are you?
Hello. My name is Genso. I am a local realtor here in Livingston County. And I've run for office in the past. I ran for state rep in 2014 and then county clerk in 2020. I have run in nonpartisan races for city council here in Brighton last year. And then I do serve on, I've gotten elected to the Brighton Library Board, which is a elected position, nonpartisan. And so I've been involved in the community for 14 years now in various roles, from school board, charter school board, and the library board, and just any ways that I can find to serve the community. That's what I look to do with my free time and as my passion.
So what drives you to run for public office?
A lot of it is that I'm not satisfied with when I look at politics as it has been played out over the last 14 years while I've been involved. I look at those who are elected and those who are running for office, and I don't identify with a lot of them. The approach that politics occurs, where it is focused on anger and fear of the other side, trying to demonize or dehumanize the others, to make the voters think that the other side is evil and therefore we're the good side, and vice versa. I don't like, even though I self-identify as a Democrat, I don't want people to view me as evil. And so it's, okay, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to be accessible and transparent and try to show people, whatever you may think of a Democrat, I'm not evil. You may disagree, but at least we can be real people and, just have those worthwhile conversations about what's best for our communities and our state.
So for your drive, it's more of a, I don't know, let's see. maybe I'm inappropriately trying to summarize something here, but I feel like it's not like there was one thing that happened and Jordan said, that's it, I'm going to get in there and change things. It's kind of a bigger conversation.
It's just, from observation of others, having worked on political campaigns back, 2008, the Obama campaign is what I first got involved with. But then I really liked helping the local candidates for state rep and county commission. And just when you enter that realm and you're observing what's going on and you see, okay, this is our politics and the way the game is played, mm-hmm. I think a lot of things occur that the public does not like. Mm-hmm. And me as an individual, I witness it. I'm like, I wish it wasn't done that way, but it's effective in some ways, and so that's why candidates do it. Running as a Democrat here in Livingston County in the 22nd District, where I'm an underdog, it frees me up where I don't have to worry about doing things to try to win votes and trick people into voting for me. Instead, I can just be genuine, do the things I would love to see others do.
Pause right there.
Yes.
What do you mean, trick people into voting for you? And then I'm coming back to John.
Yes.
To get more elaborate answer out of him.
So you'll do that a lot today.
Yeah.
It's very stereotypical for a political candidate to tell one audience one thing and a different audience something else, entirely, just trying to tell the audience what they want to hear. And basically, that's the trickery. It's not just being honest and letting them decide. I've stood in front of a Tea Party group meeting and just been honest with them because I'm not trying to win them over to my side. I just want to present who I am, and then they, as the voters, can decide whether or not they want to hire me to represent them in Lansing, because that's the better way, as opposed to you hear a politician and you just think, okay, they're telling me what I want to hear, but that's not their true beliefs, or they're just being inauthentic to try to win votes.
John?
Yes.
Do you have any more to add to your answer of why you're doing what you're doing?
Just to be upfront, I'm one of those people that I can carry a conversation, but I'm not one that drives it. So You're going to be coming back a lot.
That's what literally my job is here.
Yes.
And for the record, I'm not political. Like I have my opinions about different issues, but picking a party to me feels kind of like picking a religion. So I'm not really one to pick a flag and wave it as this is what I believe. Like the answer so often is it depends. So I'm good with pointing it back to you and extracting answers.
Good. I really liked what he said about politicians pandering to different crowds. That's always frustrated me too. And like Jordan, I'm just going to be me. I don't expect to get more than 4% of the vote. So I'm not going to try to win your vote for me. So I've always viewed politicians in general as liars. Just because you hear them say one thing to one group and another to another, and that's why you see a lot of people not trusting what our elected officials say and do.
So I just got to get some clarification around two things, and then I want to start talking about a couple of specific issues, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Actually.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, okay. So you guys are both talking about be me.
Yes.
You both said that. So if you're running as part of a party, is that can you really just be you? Are we voting for Jordan because of what Jordan personally believes, or is Jordan looking at the Democratic Party line, and saying, okay, I'm going to represent these ideals, even though they may not all match my own personal ideals? Are you tracking with that?
Yeah.
How does that
And so,
land?
Thankfully, my involvement within the Democratic Party, it's been for many years, and I even served as the chair of the County Democrats in 2011, and I have always been a little bit more moderate than some others within the party, but I have never once felt as though my version of policy and approach to politics was not welcome within the Democratic Party. So I do know that there are examples of individuals who they conform to the party And they sometimes have to do that in order to win elections or once they're in power.
Is there like a 10 commandments of being a Democrat that you must follow or something? I mean,
well, there's the values. We often hold shared values. And that's why when people ask me, am I a liberal? Am I a progressive? They want to attach a label to
yes.
you.
And that's why I made the
Yes.
10 commandment joke only in part as a joke, because I can only know what a Democrat is often by what the Republicans are saying about you, for example.
Yes.
Can I go look it up somewhere?
And so, if one person says they're a progressive and another person hears it, they may not have the same view of that label.
Yeah.
And so do I identify as a progressive? Yes, in that I hold progressive values.
Yeah.
The values that I hold typically align, as a progressive side of things. But then you have moderate versus radical, in my opinion, where I identify as a moderate in terms of the speed of changes that I like to see in policy, or I think that governance is better when it's small tweaks and incrementalism along the way rather than big sweeping changes that you're going to have unintended consequences and problems occur that you can't plan for. And so it's better to do it at a moderate approach rather than something radical. But some people identify anybody who says they're a progressive is automatically a radical. And I don't use the label that way. And so in general, I don't like using labels at all just because it muddies the water.
So I'm going to ask the same question to you, John. And I think I'm going to reframe it, because the question really is, did you pick the party or did the party pick you? Like, are you like shopping for being a Republican or a Libertarian, or are you looking at your own values and saying, okay, these align most closely with that political party?
The last one is what is mostly aligns it. I kind of identified what my values were, which is, I got to accept people for who they are.
Yep.
And let them live their lives.
That seems to be the overarching position of a libertarian.
It is. And so that's what really kind of drew me to them. Yeah, there's going to be some issues that I'll disagree, that we disagree on. Even in the Libertarian Party, like abortion, it's about 50-50 split. Should it be allowed? Should it not be? I say I got to let that person live their life. Mm-hmm. I shouldn't be judging them regardless of what they did. So that's kind of what the Libertarian Party.
So that's interesting, because if I'm a one-party voter and if I'm a one-issue voter and that's my issue, and your party is evenly split, that's no answer. Hence 4% of the votes.
Yeah, because we're actually pretty evenly split on a lot of issues, but the overarching issue for Libertarian is less government.
Okay, less government, accept differences.
Right.
All right, summarize the Democratic Party for me in a similar fashion, Jordan.
I think my view of the Democratic platform is that the government can be a force for doing what's right for the people. In our economic system of capitalism, and you're going to have the private entities looking out for their best interests, to me, the role for government is to be that player protecting the people's interests, the general public's interests.
So I have a question. This is just me pot stirring a little bit. Who decides what's in the best interest of the people, or what's right for the people? Or are you talking about specifically when it comes to as opposed to what's right for a corporation? Do you understand what I said?
Right.
Okay. It's a little layered.
Well, yeah. And so, that is where, it's democracy and governance is going to be identifying those potential problems or those outcomes that are less ideal than others in the free market, that then it's okay, should the government step in and intervene in order to protect the people, or is the free market outcome an acceptable exchange in order to have that freedom of capitalism? But that is democratically decided by our representatives, and you could say it's a Republican system as well, because we are represented by those individuals who are going to be deciding those specifics whether or not government intervention is correct.
Okay.
And the Libertarians kind of have a different approach, whereas The role of government should be nothing but to protect rights and leave us alone. So it's my job to protect. It's my job to defend myself. And if I can't, then I would have an option through the government, but it has no authority to determine on what's right or wrong.
Okay. So you're protecting rights. You're protecting people.
In a way, I almost would describe it as my approach. I look at the ends and try to figure out, okay, the means to get those ends of let's say
Be specific. Give me a
Yes.
real example.
So the growing wealth gap,
Yes.
that is an end. That is occurring.
Yes. We're looking
so-
around and we're saying, holy shit,
Yes.
all the money is held by very few people.
Right. A shrinking middle class, growing wealth
This
gap.
this is like been
Yes.
going on for 50, 60 years.
And
My
so-
dad was bitching about this when I was in like second grade.
So when that is the outcome, that is the end, what can we do to get a better end, to regrow the middle class, to shrink that wealth gap and have a more stable socioeconomic situation?
Okay.
Then you determine, okay, these are the means by which you achieve that end. Whereas if I don't want to mischaracterize libertarians, but it would be more that
We'll
you
let
don't
him
look at
answer
the
that.
ends, but the means are freedom, and then the ends are justified.
Hold on. Let's let
Okay,
John
yeah.
field that. John?
Well, as with your example of the
Yes.
wealth gap, one of the things that I'd say the average libertarian, even I could be speaking a little bit on for a lot of libertarians, so I
course.
fully admit that, would be, stop the money printing. Stop the, every bill that goes through the state house or even the federal house, all that, they spend so much money on their lobbyists and corporations. If you get rid of that, I think you'll see a lot of that wealth gap kind of go away.
So walk me through that. Stop the money printing. What does that mean?
Meaning, the Federal Reserve has been just printing money like there's no tomorrow. It's like tripled in size since 2020. Stop funding the people who help get you elected. So
Are you talking about like stop giving contracts to your cronies, kind of cronyism stuff?
Yes, that stuff like that, and like in 2020 with coronavirus, we saw a lot of money go directly to airlines for them just to keep their airplanes on the ground. Why? Mm-hmm. So it would be things to stop that sort of thing.
Okay.
That would help increase the middle class, help.
So, all right, you got to pretend I'm dumb and I don't do politics. If you stop printing money, and I'm not saying I don't agree with you or disagree with you.
Yeah.
I'm literally trying to understand. If you stop printing money, let's use the money to the airlines. How does that grow the middle class?
Well, by stop funding
Yep,
the companies that aren't doing anything,
got it.
it would allow me to say start my own business and to grow that business, because I have, instead of that money going to the airline, it's just there and I can fight for it as I choose to see fit.
Okay, so we're talking about, so we're not printing the money. I'm confused.
I don't actually see how you get from point A to point B there,
okay.
where you want to start a business. I don't think it really makes much of a difference if they're printing money for the airlines. Because if our end goal that we agree on is we want to regrow the middle class,
Yes.
what sorts of policies would you think can directly achieve that end?
Okay. Well, I'll go a little different route.
Yeah.
Because that actually makes a little more sense in my head how he worded it.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, one of the things that you could do is decrease taxes, and stop funding the government, in a way. And
By decreasing taxes, you're keeping more money in my pocket because I'm not funding this giant behemoth known
Right.
as the government.
Right. And the government's not paying to do things that you may disagree with.
Got it. Gotcha.
Does Do you understand what I'm trying to get at now?
That
I understand that.
from
yeah.
a policy initiation perspective,
Yes.
that totally makes sense to me.
I disagree that simply decreasing taxes rebuilds the middle class, but I understand
And I'm
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's a catch-all either. I'm just saying that's one of the things that could be done.
Because when it comes, I'm the type that, decrease taxes on the middle class or working families to enable them to move up the economic ladder. And so, in a way, shift the tax burden onto those who can afford it better. That would be the policies. A general description of the policies that I would like to see is just shifting the tax burden onto the wealthy and powerful because they can better withstand that burden, and it can help to reverse the trend of the growing wealth gap. The status quo is only going to see more growth in the wealth gap, so we have to kind of look back and what were the changes that occurred that brought us to this trend, and then let's reverse those. And what we've seen over the last 4 decades is a shift of the tax burden off the wealthy and onto everybody else. Right. I want to shift it back in order to regrow the middle class.
And when you guys talk about the wealthy, are you talking about people or corporations or both?
Both.
I'd go with both.
Okay. So like humans who have just a boatload of money in their bank.
Yeah, the wealthy and the powerful, and those that are at the top of the,
So
when we talk about the growing wealth gap and you talk about the consolidation of money up at the top, it's those who control that wealth. Those are the ones that they have benefited from the system since the 80s, much more so than everybody else. It's time to reverse that and ask them to bear the burden while everybody else can catch up. That's my approach.
Yeah, and I'd agree that kind of shifting it towards those who can afford to pay is a good way to do that. The question is how.
Yeah, and so we can get into specifics if you want to get into.
I would love to. I way prefer that.
Okay.
Like, what do you have some specific around this topic specifically?
Well, I have an idea.
Okay.
Not everyone's going to agree with this, but who spends the most money, right? Wealthy.
As a percentage of their income, they spend the least.
Oh, that's
As dollars,
yeah.
most.
I mean, like a working family is spending virtually every dollar they bring in, then goes back out. A wealthy person, they bring in a lot of money, and in the total dollars of what they spend on stuff, it may be a lot, but it's only a small percentage of their income.
And I'd agree with that statement. But with where I'm going is having a flat sales tax. With some things being
Are you for the state of Michigan?
well,
Or what's the ideal?
the ideal would be nationwide, but
We're running for state senate.
we're running
so
for
let's keep
state
it-
senate, so I'm
state
keeping
policy.
it as a state policy.
Yep. No, I understand that completely. I just was looking for the clarity because if we have a flat state sales tax and I want to buy a thing, I'm just going to drive into Ohio and buy it.
And that's a possibility,
Yeah.
yes. And under my kind of how I see it, and I haven't actually hammered out all the details, but it'd be say a 10% tax on water, and 90% of that would stay in the county. 10% of it would go to the state. So making the state dependent on the county and making it to try so each different county would try to get people to shop there, things like that. And there could be items such as food and drugs that may be exempt, but if I'm looking to say buy land, there might be say a 10% sales tax on that, and then I don't pay any property tax either, which may help the middle class keep a lot of their money.
I disagree with that conclusion.
Walk through it.
All right, first off, let's say, a flat sales tax. So you're eliminating the income tax.
Yes, as well as the property tax.
And property taxes. And, so in Michigan, we have, for our state budget, state taxes, we have an income tax of 4.25%.
Correct.
We have the sales tax that is currently 6%.
Correct.
You have property taxes. So the state millage for education is like 6 mils. So it's a little bit less than 1% for your property. Half your property value then gets 6 mils attached to it. But if you were to eliminate those taxes and just shift it all to a sales tax, you're looking at needing at least 14%, I think, of a sales tax in order to account for what you're eliminating in revenue.
Well, hold on.
And my 10% was just thrown out as an example.
Yeah.
And he wants to reduce. Okay, so you're talking about status quo replacing the money that we have now.
Yes.
I think he's also coming from a position of reduce the government anyway.
Right.
So you
But
don't
now-
need all of that money.
And that's then going to be you have to identify what you want to eliminate. Because
Agreed.
Now I'm of the impression, from 2011 through the beginning of 2019, the Republicans, they took power in the 2010 elections on the Tea Party, reduce the size of government wave that took over.
And they didn't do shit.
Well, they got into power. Their entire campaign was about reducing the size of government. They get every lever of power in our state government. They look at things and they come up kind of, not much we can cut. Like, I fail to believe that those individuals who held total control for 8 years and had every incentive to cut whatever waste they could find, that they didn't do so for some reason. Like, that was their campaign. It was what their base wanted them to do. If there was waste to be cut, I believe they would have done so in those 8 years, that they could do anything they wanted.
And see, that's where I guess we kind of disagree, is that I don't think they really wanted to. I think they really just kind of wanted to continue the status quo because the status quo kept them getting elected. So, I'm not saying that any of them are evil or anything.
No,
that's the reality of politics.
So then if you're going to, because my position is there is no waste. And the evidence for that is we had 8 years of total governance by a party whose platform hinged on them cutting waste. So that's my evidence as to why to think I don't see any waste there. What would you identify as wasteful, or how would you make the argument that waste currently exists other than an assumption that it exists?
Well, here's an example of a position that I would cut. We have a state fire marshal. Why?
I don't know.
Why? I mean, we have fire officials in each county. They're the ones that should be responsible to help for the fire stuff,
Yeah.
But that would be a position that I would cut.
Okay.
That I would want to get rid of. Now, to really fully understand all the things that I need to cut, obviously I'd have to look at the budget, which I haven't done.
Okay.
I fully admit that. But yeah, I'd want to look at the budget to see where other places are. Another thing I might consider cutting would be like the Health and Human Services, because my health should be between me and my doctor, not me and the county and my doctor, or things like that.
But as far as, so that's Medicaid.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's the government being the one paying the bill because, if you're getting Medicaid, you're otherwise not able to afford it.
Right.
So if you get rid of that, then you have people who don't have a doctor because they can't afford one.
Yes, and there are a lot of people who are very charitable, and those would be places that they would be able to go to help. Now, I'm not saying that everyone is, or you would necessarily take care of the entire problem, but I would remove a lot of that, the government things that help people, to the private charities, because I know Michiganders are very generous with their time and money.
So if that's the overall concept, then is shift government services out of the government realm and onto the charitable realm. That has a lot more faith in charities than I would put on them, in that I trust that charities, have good intentions and every desire. I don't think they have the means to reach everybody equally, because that's very important, that under our governance, everybody has equal access to goods and services and in treatment under the law. But in a charity-based system, not everybody's going to have equal access to those charities. because a charity can decide who they're serving. They don't have a requirement that they're serving the entire state.
Okay. Yeah, I get where you're coming from. And the problem with the government doing it is, as you kind of said, that they have to. So, and I'll use this example. I have had two uncles who since passed. One couldn't work because he had some disabilities, but wanted to. I had another uncle that could work, but refused to. I don't want to help the one that refused to work. And the government has to provide him service. Whereas a charity can say, you can work, you refuse to, we're not helping you. And that they're more likely to do stuff like that. That's why I have more faith in these charities.
Yes, but then you seem to put more faith in a charity's ability to nuance, decide this person is legitimately worthy of support, this person is not. And so I would rather have it be the government providing that small safety net. And anybody in the safety net, your uncle who could in theory work but wasn't, it's not like he's going to be living some lavish lifestyle that I'm jealous of. No, it's the safety net is just for basic needs and survival. And that is necessary because the alternative of relying on charities and their ability to nuance, decide, okay, this person is worthy, this one's not. If they get that wrong and somebody who should be worthy is deemed to not be, what happens to that person? There is no government safety net. The charities have turned them down. They are out of luck. And I don't think that in our society we should adopt a system that gets that outcome. And again, it's outcome that I'm focused on, and what are the means to fix that outcome.
Okay, yeah. I understand where you're coming from. It's just
Oh, this is good.
oh, I'm glad to hear
As someone who's has a very close family member plugged into this exact system, I'm hearing both sides. Like, I can agree with where I think your position comes from, John, in that it's looking at what we have in place and seeing how fucking broken it really is.
It is.
But on the other hand, what else do we have? I get both of that.
Yeah.
So go.
And kind of to address one of your issues is that's why we have family members, and I'm not saying every family member can afford to take care of somebody, and I get that, but I just think it's a much better system because it puts the responsibility back onto the people versus taking it and then saying, you're going to do what I say or you're going to get kicked off. And I just kind of think that's wrong. We're forcing them to do things that they may not necessarily want to do. Whereas you get a charity, you go to a charity and say, I need some help. They say, okay, well, we'll help you along as you're doing these things. And then the two of them can decide whether it's a good idea or not to continue.
One thing that I don't know the nonprofit system well enough. I know our state budget and the scope and size of it. But I also question the feasibility of charities. How much would they actually grow in size in order to accommodate and serve the people and responsibilities that you're trying to place on them? Is that an actual feasible model of relying on the donations and goodwill?
Interestingly, I'm going to interject here and tell you that a lot of the charities are actually funded with government dollars.
Yeah. And
let's go.
But it's a small portion of the state budget going to those charities and their operations.
It's usually often tied to the individual receiving services as well. Much like the school money is attached to the student's head.
yes. And, I don't think, overnight, that's not, if I cut all the government overnight, it's not going to, all the charities aren't going to be able to, and I get that. Mm-hmm. But I think if the government cuts and cuts and cuts, as well as your tax dollars, people will be giving more and more money to these charities. I know I wish I could give more, and if I kept my income tax, well, there's 5% of my income more that I can give away. So, I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand with how much the government takes and how much we give to the charity.
I don't trust that it would be anywhere near an equal dollar for dollar, what you save in your taxes going to the state that you're then going to turn around and give to a charity. And I also you get the tragedy of the commons where if everybody, can just kind of think, oh, well, I'm relying on everybody else to do the right thing, so it's okay if I do the wrong thing here, then everybody ends up doing the wrong thing and not being as charitable because they just assume everybody else is. It's not, to me, a sustainable or really feasible way to, if you can recognize the legitimacy of the service, like this individual who needs that safety net because they're not able to work. As soon as it's a legitimate service, I think then it's a legitimate role for government only because it is a more reliable way to ensure that service is provided rather than a charity basis.
And I don't think the government at all is, as a whole, is reliable. They're, someone that if I just trying to think in my head how I want to word this, but okay, so if I'm in say work for HUD, the housing projects, and I want to keep my job, I'm going to make sure I get more and more people into these public housing places. Whereas a charity is going to look for ways to get someone off their rolls, help you get their house, be more like a Habitat for Humanity type thing. Let's get you a house, get you set up, make sure that you can pay for it, get you on your feet and let you have your way.
What about the people who can't get on their feet, like your one uncle who can't work?
Well, then and honestly, I would have no problem having a continual lifeline for that, for him,
All right. So just to address the me looking at my phone moment, I did.
You fact checked me?
I wanted to know.
We didn't know anything about.
Yeah, what the hell is the fire marshal? So here's what it says on Michigan.gov, and it's a bunch of words that say nothing. The state fire marshal is the chief advocate of fire safety for Michigan citizens, the fire service, and others affected by Michigan's Fire Prevention Code and the Firefighters Training Council Act. I feel like this might be one of those things that doesn't make sense unless you're inside of that room, and then you can see the necessity for having that. Right?
It very well could be.
For sure.
But, kind of my thinking is, at least with that particular position, is why not have like a group of firefighters saying, okay, we want to listen to this guy, have him, take care of this and let them pay for it, not the state.
And I personally look at those little examples as kind of just small anecdotes that,
as a representative example of the mindset of a libertarian in office, though.
That's what I was using.
I would perceive the size of those types of anecdotes as being really small, and on each one you'd have to hear the counter side of, okay, in the firefighting community, what value do they see in having that statewide advocate for what they do? And how much is it the salary? Is it just a small figurehead stipend? Okay,
and my thinking is, if they want someone in that position, let the firefighter union pay for that, not the state. And so, I'm not necessarily getting rid of the position. I'm just shifting the burden of paying.
Okay, but when it gets then to, you have small things like that, but the real money, because our budget is like $39 billion. Yeah. And so
where would you address the money?
So you have, Health and Human Services, you have the school aid fund, you have the revenue sharing. Now, I'm a strong advocate for increasing the revenue sharing that is going to our counties and our cities, municipalities, city, village, townships, because I do think that those local investments in our local communities are much
Are you talking
more-
about?
Yes.
Everybody in the state, and I'm showing you my ignorance here, but what I think I just heard you say is all the tax money that we pay in at the state level then gets redistributed and given back to the counties. Why don't we just give it to our county? Because what I want in Livingston is different than what Traverse City needs.
And that's
Clare County has a completely different set of stuff.
Well, it's because of what the state government has to do, like the Health and Human Services or the School Aid Fund.
Mm-hmm.
This money does have to get to the state level buckets
to
to
then
then
be-
disperse out.
Yes.
Almost like a title company. You need one entity,
Clearinghouse.
yes, to then disperse the
A
funds.
settlement agent.
And so, when it comes to something like revenue sharing, you have the constitutional requirements. Okay, so a small portion of the marijuana tax is going into the bucket that is, constitutionally required to then be shared with the counties and municipalities. But then there's also a small portion that's going to the general fund. The general fund is the catch-all bucket that then from there gets dispersed mostly for the health and human services. But a small portion goes to the higher education or the revenue.
Okay, so
I'd say that's an accurate description of how it goes.
is that a population-based dispersal?
For what?
Well, I don't know.
For the state
if the
fund?
state has the money, and then how do they decide who gets it all? Which
everything.
county gets
Every
it?
bucket has formulas and every
And I think-
appropriation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and with
That
how
can get funny.
with my sales tax idea, what would happen is, say Cleary's Pub would pay all their sales tax to the county,
Mm-hmm.
and then the county would pay a portion to the state. So, in the vast majority of your money would stay in the
So instead of a top-down
It would be a
dispersal of
bottom-up.
funds,
But
yeah.
right now, the sales tax is primarily going into the bucket for the school aid fund. I mean, that is where our sales tax dollars are directed to.
But I thought that was
Supposedly.
funded by the lottery.
Yeah, and so you have the lottery.
Notice my shock.
You have a bunch of those very teeny tiny. They're publicly known, like the tax on tobacco or alcohol, the sin taxes.
Ooh, can we talk about those?
Yeah.
What happens what happens when everybody quits smoking? How are we going to pay for stuff?
No, they're the tiniest little sliver of the budget. They mean virtually nothing to the overall funding of our school.
Then why don't we just get rid of them?
We could, but the whole idea is you're trying to
Manipulate people's behavior by taxing it?
Yes,
That's
that's-
what
I call
government does.
bullshit.
That's
I
what
call
government does
bullshit.
best.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's where there's the end.
Justifying the means.
And do I agree with that? Not necessarily.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions. I think we've heard that before.
Yes. And I want to get rid of all those good intentions
I see. Okay.
but yeah,
that you decide for yourself.
the absolute bulk of our state revenue is the individual income tax
Okay.
and then the sales tax. Those are the two biggest.
That's the big money makers for the
Yes.
state of Michigan.
Yes, and then you have a couple others. Well, I'm drawing blanks on, but I mean, then you have some of the smaller. Now you do have the corporate tax,
So-
that goes to the general fund.
And I would like to talk about that too. Corporate tax. I have some notes in here. Hold on. I feel like, pension tax. What about inheritance taxes? All of that
That's
jazz.
federal,
Is
I
that not real?
I believe
The
inheritance is
inheritance tax is federal.
federal. Yeah,
Oh, not state. Okay.
Right. The pension tax, though,
What is
Snyder's
that even? I don't even know what that is.
retirees now get taxed on their pensions in the state.
Do they already pay taxes on that money?
No. So prior to Snyder taking over with the Tea Party wave, pensions were not taxed as income. Part of their shared sacrifice mantra, they then introduced a pension tax that treats it the same.
Was this a situation where people opted into a pension
Yeah.
with the belief that they didn't have to pay taxes when they got it out, and the rules got changed
Yes.
after their money was already in?
Yes.
Scandalous.
But the vast majority of people, especially these days, no longer have pensions
Right.
and 401k.
For sure.
So honestly,
There are
that's
some legacy. There are legacy
there
employees that do though.
are. And, under I would get rid of that, to be honest. I know it's just a small percentage of people and income, but it's still.
I'm the type that, I disagree with Governor Whitmer here because she's been pushing to get rid of it. I don't think it's necessary to fully eliminate the pension tax because it's treated the same as any other income. If my preference to see the tax burden shift towards the wealthy were to occur, then, okay, so by increasing the earned income tax credit or
What is that?
So the earned income tax credit is for working families. For the more you make up to a certain point, then the larger your tax credit is, and then it starts to decrease back down. It's a federal program, and so at the state level, we have a matching of it. So right now, I think it's 6%. So whatever your federal earned income tax credit is. So a tax credit means it's not a deduction. It doesn't decrease your tax burden. It's actual dollars, going towards your tax bill. And if you end up,
what is the difference? The net result is the same.
No.
Walk me through this.
Yes.
Give me real numbers, though, not the hypothetical.
Okay. So let's say you made $50,000.
Yes.
And you have a $5,000 tax deduction. Then your income is going to be taxed as though it's $45,000.
Yes.
But if instead it's a tax credit, you then figure out, okay, what is your tax burden at $50,000? And it may only be, let's say, $2,000. You get a $5,000 credit, so you're getting $3,000.
It's like seller
back.
concessions.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Instead of purchase price reduction.
Exactly.
Love it. I'm a real estate broker, so this works for my brain.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not a real estate agent, so.
Okay. All right. That's right.
But yes, so our earned income tax credit is 6% of the federal earned income tax credit. So whatever you calculate for your federal, you get 6%.
So a tax credit gets more money for the state than a deduction.
No.
Yeah.
A tax credit
reverse.
No.
Right, is the state writing you a check.
Yes.
Well, I know, but they're writing you a check on an amount that you are taxed. So if I'm paying taxes, hold on.
So if my bill is $2,000, but I get an earned income credit of $3,000, the state's going to write me a check for $1,000.
Well, I understand, but the rate that it's calculated on is $50,000 instead of $45,000.
Yes, but I mean, it is something that...
Why do they do it that way instead of just reducing your taxable income?
Because it's about encouraging people to work if you're low income.
I see.
So
Got it.
if you're making $20,000 a year by making
and the expectation is that
you make an even larger earned income tax
and
credit.
the expectation, this is cute, is that the average worker understands this. Right. Like, come on, this is so Byzantine and stupid.
A lot of accountants don't understand. But.
You just heard me going like, duh.
But that's where, if we increase, from 6% to 10%, what we're calculating is the earned income tax credit.
So where's that money going to come from?
So that then is going to decrease the tax revenue coming from working families. Okay. And then let's say we also increase the homestead property tax credit, which, under Snyder, they decreased the threshold, I think, from 80,000 down to like 60,000. So if we instead, restore that and put it up to 100,000. So families earning less than 100,000 a year, they can get this property tax credit. So their tax burden decreases. You want to decrease the tax burden on people. Then, okay, we need to make up that revenue somehow.
So you're saying,
yes.
So hold on. John, you're saying get rid of property taxes. Jordan, you're saying make it so only some people pay property taxes.
I'm saying shift the burden. So you're decreasing the income tax burden off of working families and the middle class.
You're saying only some people should pay property taxes. I'm sorry. I'm just shitty with you for a minute. But.
No, because it doesn't affect property taxes.
Okay.
This is all about in the income tax stream.
It's on the filing side.
Yeah, it's on the filing side. And so if you...
The cup in the ball game.
Yeah, so I still pay property taxes, but I get that credit back at its state income is what he's trying to sell.
Yeah, that's the homestead property tax credit. And yeah, right now you have to be under 60,600 to qualify for it. It should be, higher, so it's really there to help the middle class as well. Because the middle class, as a percentage of their income, they pay more in property taxes than somebody at the high end of the economic spectrum or somebody at the low end. So property taxes really traditionally hit the middle class the hardest. And so a homestead property tax credit should be geared towards them, in my opinion. But then if you do these things, so you're decreasing the tax burden on working families and the middle class, then you can increase the income tax rate from 4.25% up to 4.5% or 5%, which then will definitely make up that revenue. It's shifting the tax burden onto the wealthy. They'd be paying a little bit more.
So do you think the wealthy run a lot of their income through their businesses? Let's talk about corporate taxes.
I would say so. And, just kind of round out on that pension thing is I don't think a lot of wealthy people have their income tied up in pensions. It tends to be the people that are of lower class that want that guaranteed monthly income, whatever it is.
Yeah, trying to figure out how to still afford to live when you're done working.
Right. And that's why I don't think you need to eliminate the pension tax. If instead, if somebody's got a pension and they're making $60,000 a year on it, then by increasing, those other things that are shifting the burden off of people making $60,000, they're getting those same benefits of that tax relief.
Right.
Even though they have a pension tax, they get the same benefits as, because to me, it shouldn't make a difference whether somebody made that $60,000 by working that year or it came through their pension. Either way, their tax burden should be the same. It should be lower than it is right now.
Except those people that put that money away did so at a different time. They paid a different way earlier in their lives.
Yeah, I mean, in kind of today's vernacular, would be like starting to tax your IRA that's, put in after taxes.
Yeah, the Roth IRA.
It's changing the rules.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good, for sure.
Right.
Which isn't right, in my opinion.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, in theory, I mean, now most of these people with pensions are public sector workers.
Yeah.
Traditionally, the public sector, the way that they've been able to recruit individuals to, work for the government or, just...
Everybody wants to work for the post office, right?
Well, because, I mean, traditionally, they had a better benefits package at a lower salary. And so, I mean, I serve on the library board. We, don't pay great competitive salaries if you just look at the salary, but then libraries offer typically really good health insurance and great benefits to the employees to kind of make up for the fact that the salary is going to be a little lower.
Yeah.
All right. So where were we going? You were saying to round out what?
You wanted to do corporate, I think.
I do. Yeah, I want to keep talking about the money.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that thing on the pensions. That's all.
Okay. So let's talk about corporate tax finagling.
Okay. So yes, I believe that, most of the wealthy, the Warren Buffetts and Bill Gates of the world,
Yes.
There's more.
Obviously. I feel like they're just such anomalies. Like we're using a really extreme example, and who are our local? Can we?
Okay.
The Illiches.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
The Manny Maroons.
All right.
Let's see, the Vosses or
Sure.
whatever. Name a local billionaire.
I wish I knew them. If there are any out there and you need to buy a house, I'm your girl. Let me know.
In Livingston County.
That's right. Greater Livingston. I'll go about 50, 60 miles out.
So
anyway, corporate taxes.
So yes, they do probably run most of their money through businesses, and they probably spend a lot of their money through these businesses.
As a business.
So because they can get tax deductions for that. So if I go buy a computer, I don't get a tax deduction through it. But if I were to run it through a business, I do. Mm-hmm. So and those deductions seem to incentivize people to start businesses, which is good economically. However. Yes. But, so they not only get that deduction, they're spending less money on taxes, right? So if you go to a sales tax type of thing, they're guaranteed to pay an equal number of taxes, as well as... So instead of opening businesses, they need to open nonprofits or churches to avoid that too. Yes. But here's something else that they do. They pass all those taxes on to the customer, making their prices go up, making it harder.
Which taxes?
Any tax that they pay.
No, they do not, in my opinion.
Slow walk it. Bought the computer. I have ABC. I almost said ABC Warehouse. Let's call it 123 store. Okay. Yeah. So, in order to make a profit, I got to charge my customers more than what I pay for the product. Right? Yes. Yeah. That's your margin. If I want to make, say, $100,000 a year after taxes, I'm going to raise my prices a little bit higher. I disagree with the economics there, because a business is going to be self-interested. Yes. They are going to maximize their profits. They are going to set their price in a way that maximizes their profit in the end. Yeah, and I'll agree with you there. Okay, what percentage of income tax or tax they pay on those profits does not change the calculation of the price for their products that maximize those profits. So if you're charging, 10% of a corporate tax, now it's 6%, but
if you were to increase it from 6% to 10%, that doesn't change what a business, their actions would be to still maximize their profits, what price they're charging to the customers. They can't pass that on because in theory, if they could pass that on and make more money, they would already be doing so because they want to maximize profits. So any tax that's applied to profits, you have to trust then just basic economic theory that it doesn't affect what the business is going to be doing. It's going to determine whether or not, they view it as a worthwhile investment of capital. And so over the long run, you may see, different businesses leave the market because they weren't making enough after-tax profit. But the price to consumers does not change.
Okay, I understand where you're coming from, but it's still, if I want to make that end net margin, net profit, I'm either going to have to raise my prices a little bit, or I'm going to have to drive in more customers somehow.
But why wouldn't you have done either of those options even if there wasn't a tax on your profits? Why would you intentionally leave the opportunity to make more money on the table? Like, you're saying as though a business sets a goal of we're going to make this much, and once we make that much, we're not going to do anything to go above it. No, a business is going to shoot for whatever they can make profit-wise.
All the money.
Yeah. And so they have a target, a goal, but they're not constrained by it. It's not as though once they make it, now we don't need to charge anymore because we've made our goal.
Okay.
Can we do it go ahead.
Okay, I'll try it this way. Okay, so even under what you're saying, that they're not going to, it's not that as a customer, I don't pay for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so, sorry, my taxes go up from, say, 6% to 10%.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and let's say I make $100,000 a year, so that would be what, $4,000?
Yeah.
So I know that $4,000, I may not be able to buy a new fridge for my restaurant. So that would affect the businesses and my customers in the long run.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll try it. That's me trying it a different way to explain what I'm trying to say.
If we were in an era where corporate profits were relatively low, and so there's not enough capital available to reinvest in companies, that argument would make sense. But we are in an era of record high profits and businesses making more money than they've ever made before. The access to capital is not a constraint that is really determining what businesses are doing. If a business wants to go out and pay for that fridge, either they have the funds because they've been doing great, or there's a lot of money available to borrow against. Right now, the ever since the crash on the recovery, since 2008, money has been available. Access to capital is there, and so it's only if that's restrictive does your example actually work out that way.
So let's just pretend that I open the Rachele widget shop.
Yes.
And I buy widgets for $5 and I sell them for $10. Yes. On every widget, I'm paying taxes on the $5 purchase price as a sales tax. Yes. And I'm making, let's say I have no overhead. Okay. I don't cut myself a salary and I don't have to buy any shit for my company.
Yes.
It's magic. It's the magic widget shop.
Okay.
So I'm making $5 per.
Yes.
In this hypothetical business model. Yeah. If I'm paying 4%, no, it's now 6%. That's how old I am. I'm paying 6% sales tax in Michigan.
Now you have the sales tax of 6%. You also have the Michigan business tax, which is 6%, which is on taxes.
On the profit.
On profits.
And I was going to get there. So I'm paying 6% to buy my widget for $5. Yep. That's 30 cents.
Yes.
And then on the $5 that I made, I'm paying 30 cents.
You only made $4.70 because of the 30 cents.
Because I took the deduction. So that is where
So then the $4.70 is profit.
Which is, so what's 6% of $4.70? Quick.
It'd be like, 29
do the math.
cents.
Is it?
Something like that, yeah.
Good job. This is why I don't work in a title. I don't do the math. So if the sales tax goes up, and that John, was that your
Yeah.
Yes.
proposition?
Yes.
So if sales tax goes up, instead of making 30 cents, the state makes $1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And then
You'd be eliminating the 29
but we're
cents.
losing the 29 cents. So this is actually,
Well, that would cost the business more. Yes.
it would cost the business more, but
here's the thing.
Right.
The business wouldn't be paying for that. The customer, me, would be.
Yes, because so you could have it structured
Well,
where
hypothetically,
the $5
but in the
widget that it
hold
costs
on.
you. Yeah.
you said the customer would be paying it.
Right. Not you.
But if I'm buying the widget for $5, I have to pay a sales tax.
It would be the final customer that pays it, not
Why?
the intermediary.
So in economics, in theory,
I don't want theory. In reality, I have my widget shop
so
that's
you-
magic,
if
and I
you're-
buy a $5
yes.
widget. I have to pay taxes on the $5 widget.
because now that widget costs. Oh, I'm sorry, it would go up to 50 cents, not $1.
Okay.
No, but the dollar would be all the sales on the final product.
No. Stop.
Oh, when you go to sell. Okay.
No.
Sorry. No, yes.
So
But
no, on
when I
her-
buy it, if you change the sales tax, and I'm just buying widgets from my neighbor Bob, I buy Bob's widget for $5. He's my supplier. I pay a 10% sales tax to him. No?
under what I would
Yes.
like, okay,
Yes.
only the final customer would pay.
So
But I'm a customer.
Yeah, you are a customer, but you buy from, say, Jordan,
Yeah.
and then I buy from you.
Yeah.
So
she doesn't.
so
I
she
don't
would-
pay-
so
I
you
don't
wouldn't
pay a sales
for the
tax?
sales tax. I would.
But that's not that's not even how it works right now. Like
That's
if
what-
I go to Staples and buy a printer for my business, I pay taxes on it.
That's how I would want. That's
So
how
you're eliminating the tax for the business
Yeah.
purchase and putting it so the end user, I would never be an end user. I would only buy everything through my business.
So what does that do? What is the ends that are achieved? It further exacerbates the wealth gap in consolidating wealth with those businesses because their
So
tax burden is eliminated.
Slow walk the real example.
Yes.
So
I'm
yeah, I honestly I didn't think about what you were saying.
Walk it
But
all the way
yeah,
through.
so for under your example,
Yeah.
to kind of help with that wealth gap, I guess I would have to charge that business that
charge the
10%.
business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're talking about, now I forgot what your solution was.
My solution is just in the income tax system that we have.
Yes.
We have a flat sales tax or a flat income tax of 4.25%.
Yes.
And so by increasing tax credits like the earned income tax
Yes.
credit and the homestead property tax credit, you can decrease the tax burden
Yep.
on working families in the middle class. And then that allows you to increase the overall income tax rate to, let's say, 5%.
But that's for people. We were kind of talking
Right.
about business taxes.
So businesses, I mean, I would, increase that, from 6% to maybe 10%.
and that would be on the
haven't
profits.
worked the number.
No, of
Yeah,
course.
but yeah.
On the profit side,
Yes.
not on the
Yes.
sales tax side.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. Because a business now you do have businesses are more easily able to relocate than people, typically speaking.
Okay.
So, and the Michigan business tax is not such a great revenue generator for the state that it's necessarily what I would use to generate more revenue because
Gotcha.
even if you were to double the amount of money that comes in from the Michigan business taxes, that's a smaller drop in the bucket than increasing the sale or the income tax
Okay.
up to 5%. But if you're increasing the income tax up to 5% and increasing the tax credits along with it, so the burden is not any
So you're
heavier.
keeping the money coming in. You're just pushing the burden,
Yes.
redistributing it.
Yes.
I understand.
So it's more so on the wealthy because, I mean, somebody, if they're going to leave the state because, their income was only taxed at 4.25, now it's going to be 5%. I don't think that us as individuals really perceive that as being a major part of the calculation of where we live. When we go to, to decide where do I want to live,
Most of us just live where we landed.
live where we landed. But if you're going to relocate, you're going to see, okay, how much, what is my salary going to be in that? And, if you're comparing, if you have job offers all over the state, including in Michigan, the odds that a job offer, the discrepancy between two is like a 1% difference, where then, now because Michigan has a 0.75% higher income tax rate.
I would argue that people move because they want to, not because of tax
Yeah,
percentages.
Right. So by increasing the income tax up to 5%, you're going to generate more revenue for the state overall. You then have the earned income tax credit and property tax credit to decrease the burden on the middle class. That helps achieve the end, or at least reverse the trend of the growing wealth gap. That's what I want, is to stop the growing wealth gap. This is one mechanism we have at the state level where we can do it. It
just starts to sound very complex and intentionally Byzantine.
Yeah.
So that your regular people can't track it.
But the status quo is Byzantine.
No, I understand. And I'm not throwing you under the bus.
Right,
I'm
right.
saying it's frustrating when you're trying to talk about wealth redistribution to have to do all of these freaking levers that your average guy who's going to work every day and being crushed by the system doesn't understand how to work it to his benefit.
And that's one of the reasons why I like that sales tax, because it makes everything simple.
It levels, theoretically on paper, it looks like it should.
Basically, if I don't want to pay taxes, then I don't spend money.
Right.
But the
simplifying it.
Working families don't have that luxury of choosing not to spend money. Whatever income they're bringing in.
No. I think the intention is more about clearing the muddy water so people can understand.
Oh, yes. Yeah. As far as it eliminates the Byzantine tax code for
eliminates
income tax
all that and
almost like burn that bitch down and we'll start over.
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So are there any other places where tax credits make sense for doing what you're talking about doing?
You have like the home heating tax credit, which is another one for working, lower income individuals. You do have tax credit, but as far as the larger
drivers of the economy,
the things that are in our current income tax structure at the state level, you only need a couple, because the more you add, the more Byzantine it becomes. If instead you have a couple levers to decrease the burden on these populations, while you have the overall income tax amount being the blanket that's a burden on everybody, by easing it on some, that's how you can then shift the balance and rechange the status quo so it's not shifted. The fuel tax right now. The fuel tax is one of those, like a sales tax on every gallon, 27 cents. Now, in many ways, a fuel tax is justified because, of what it is required to go to funding-wise. It's paying for the roads. It's paying for the transportation, because that's another one of those big, along with the Health and Human Services and the school aid fund, transportation is another big expenditure appropriation. And so those funds, though, constitutionally come from the registration fees on vehicles and the fuel tax. So you can decrease the burden on people by decreasing the fuel tax, but at the same time, that's kind of a fair usage because it's driving the expense on the other side of, the roads are getting in worse shape because people are driving on them.
Yeah, and
charge the people who are driving.
Because cars are getting better gas mileage,
Yeah.
We're spending less in gas. And now there's a huge push to go 100% electric. Mm-hmm. Well, where's the tax for the roads coming from now?
Right. And it's all vehicle registration fees that would be left, which is not enough to fund our
so what would happen is that they'd quadruple the registration fees. You know, the number might be a little off, but
yeah. I mean, they recently increased it like 20% a couple of years ago. Yeah.
So, and you're going to see more and more of that.
And when it comes to user fees in that regard, you're using the roads, you then have to pay a user fee. Yeah. That makes total sense.
Oh, I agree.
But when it comes to funding just the general government and things like the safety net, where you can't charge the people who need the safety net for the safety net, that's the whole point, or things like our education system, where it's not just parents who benefit from having a quality education system. It's the society as a whole. So you've got to put that burden on society as a whole to pay for, provide for it. It's not a user fee at that point.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And I agree that there should be some public education. We probably disagree on what level that, would be, but You brought up education. One of the things I'd like to see in education is, where each child gets, say $1,000. I don't know how much, it's spent for each child, and then they get to choose any place in the state that they want to, and which includes public schools, private schools. It doesn't matter what school. You get, this is how much the school is going to get.
Voucher system.
Yeah. And I would love to see that.
And
we talked about this previously.
Rachel's
He was a guest on my show, and we kind of dug into this a little bit because it's a difficult thing to wrap your head around.
So I would be interested in hearing your counter argument then when it comes to vouchers. So right now you have funding that is going to the traditional schools and the charter schools. Right. Those are the two different types of schools that are publicly funded. Yeah. Then you have other schools outside of that, like the private schools, the religious schools, that don't receive public dollars.
Right.
So if you were to instead switch over to a voucher system, where you're taking all of those students who are in those, which is about 10% of the student population, is going to a non-public funded system. But if you were to put them into the denominator now of, you have the school aid budget, now you're adding 10% more kids that it's being divided amongst. So now every school, the traditional schools and the charter schools, they see their per pupil allowance. I think it's in the 8,000s right now. I know it was recently raised. I could be wrong on the number, but it would go from like 8,800 down to 8,000 only. So they're seeing like a 10% cut. All those current schools receiving those public dollars see a 10% cut in their funding. How do you expect those schools to manage that hit?
But hold on. You have to acknowledge, and I'm sorry for stepping in here, but don't you have to acknowledge that discrepancy exists because the system as it's working now makes that happen? Like that reduction in per pupil spending by the influx of the additional pupils into the system is a direct result of the way the money is allocated right now. So the system created this problem, and if you undo it, it's now called a problem. It's a circumstance. No, and wouldn't some of the schools disappear over time? So then your pupil I don't know. Seems like it would balance itself out in a couple of years. I could be wrong.
I think I could be misunderstanding with what you're saying, and I'm going to kind of address. So, so the discrepancy, you would still see that deduction.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
But you're opening up more schools, which would cause more competition. And
just to clarify, do you mean making more schools available, not necessarily breaking ground on a new school?
Right. Okay. So now my tax money can go to.
So now Rachele
Catholic
can
Central
send her kids to, I don't know, I can send them to Kalamazoo.
Yeah. Yes.
But we already have competition in our education system. We have school of choice, so you can send your kid to any traditional school you want that has room for that student.
Yes.
And we have charter schools, which recently had their cap lifted. So there could be an unlimited number of charter schools that enter the competition or the education market. If you want to see more schools hit the market for that competition outcome, that already can occur. It's just they have to be charter schools, which is still preferable to more Catholic Centrals opening up and getting our tax dollars.
Well, all I'm saying is that by opening up these private schools to this public funding, you would make it easier for a child, say in downtown Detroit, to go to these private schools that have outperformed the public and charter schools, which is what the goal is, for the better education.
What distinguishes a private school from a public school?
They tend to be private. They can basically select who they.
Okay. They take and what they're teaching, like their curriculum, they control a lot more of the actual education.
Right.
Whereas a charter school and traditional schools, they've got to abide by state standards and follow the state curriculum.
Right.
And Why is that? Why is it that we have a state curriculum and standards that we put on our traditional schools and our charter schools? What is the benefit to us as the public?
My honest opinion, there is none as far as the state's concerned. But that, like I said,
Okay.
that's just my opinion.
So,
you know.
but would you recognize that for somebody who does see a benefit to society to have certain standards and curriculum
Yes.
in our traditional schools, that is why me as a taxpayer, even if I didn't have children of my own, that's why I'm paying into that public education system, is for that outcome of those standards and that curriculum, and to now allow these other entities to come in that don't abide by those but still capture my tax dollars. Why am I as a taxpayer wanting to pay for that?
And I would say,
Because they have a better education system than what the public dollars spend on.
I have a wild question. If a private school wanted public dollars, could they become a charter school?
Oh, they do it all the time.
So the path
Here in
exists.
Livingston County,
so
yes.
the path for what you're talking about doing
Light of the World
exists.
here in Pinckney was a
And literally by doing so, they're saying, okay, we will opt in to the minimum standards set at the state level.
yes.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, they decided to,
Okay.
they wanted to capture the public dollars.
Just bringing it full
And
circle.
so those dollars have strings along with it, which is the standards and the curriculum.
I see.
And so there are private schools that, they are struggling financially, and so they decide, okay, to get that revenue.
And this is
and
why
that-
mom can't
But-
get
but-
paid for
but that-
homeschooling her kids.
But
I
Or
do
can't
think
you?
there's credits.
All right.
yeah, all
sorry.
I was going to say is, but I would cut off those strings so that these private schools can still say, these are the things that we're teaching. You go to Brighton High School, they can say, we're going to be abiding by the state, what the state sets, and say a Christian school says, we're going to do what this standard, and then you as a parent get to choose what standard you want to send your kids to.
But for those who are not parents, for those who are the general public who are paying the taxes that are going to these, why would they want to see their tax dollars go to schools that don't have the standards or curriculum placed on them as determined by us as a society through our
So someone like me who I don't have any kids.
Yeah.
So what value would I see in the system I just threw out? The fact that the next generation, my nieces and nephews, their parents get to choose. We want our kids to learn these values that the school is teaching, and these values better align with what their parents want them to learn. So in essence, that will give a better education to them, allowing for them to do better in the world.
But those are values that the public has decided should not be incorporated into the traditional schools?
It doesn't matter. I mean, because there's value, and honestly, there's values in every single opinion that's out there. So regardless of what I think, because my sister and I disagree on a whole heck of a lot, at least political-wise and religiously-wise. I have no problem with her sending her kids to any school she wants because she sees value there. Because, I have no problem with my brother sending his kids wherever he wants them to go. Because I want that diversity of ideas. I want that diversity of views. That's where the value is.
It would be interesting to see what would happen in such a situation where there were no minimum performance or minimum standards of education. You could literally have like some very culty things bubbling up. I'm just saying hypothetically.
Yeah, there's always going to be cults, but I get what you're saying, yeah.
So, okay, can I direct to a different direction?
Absolutely.
Do you have anything else on the schools?
No.
All right. Yeah. What you said made sense. What you said made sense. So we're talking about money. We've talked about tax credits. We're in a budget situation. So where does the state spend too much money or not enough money?
All right. Well, for me, as I had alluded to previously, I am a strong advocate for sending more in the revenue sharing to the local communities. And so county government, and more specifically, the cities, villages, and townships, I think that because when 2008 occurred and, the property taxes decreased and the governmental budgets across the state, were hit really hard. when Snyder took over and the Tea Party, one of the things they did is they cut the revenue sharing with those local municipalities.
Does that mean they kept more money at the state level
Yes.
and gave us less, gave
Yes.
each community less back?
Yes. So because so if you're on city council, let's say, and you're seeing your revenue, one of those revenue items for the city is the revenue sharing from the state.
Mm-hmm.
And so when, after 2011, it gets cut, all of a sudden now your entire budget was thrown out of whack because, people at the state decided to do so. And so then you've got to figure out where to make cuts and decrease services. I'm an advocate for local control, and I think that investing in our local communities is the best investment that our government can do. And so giving more funds to our cities and villages and townships to determine, okay, these are the things that are needed locally, whether it's roads or whether it's broadband or whatever that community needs, they are often constrained by not having the funds, the resources to do it. The state increasing revenue sharing with them is then enabling those local municipalities to do the things that they recognize are needed for their community and that their constituents want. So that's my primary thing of what I would like to see increased.
So where the state spends too little is on the revenue share. Stating it back to you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and you and I we agree that the county should keep it. I'd say at the highest level of counties. But
Yeah.
so yes, that needs to be increased. Here's another thing that we're probably going to disagree on.
Yeah.
I honestly would like to cut all the entire state budget for the public universities, make them all private. You do that, because not everyone goes to college, right? I shouldn't have gone to college, I'll be honest. So why should we pay for a service for a few? So we get rid of that, and then we can use some of that money for, say, K through 12 education. The basics where the state is requiring everybody to do.
And are you also then going to take the same position when it comes to community colleges?
No, because community colleges are paid for by that community, and they, like Washtenaw.
Well, as far as a budget item in the state budget, the community colleges get pretty much the same amount as higher education. It's the community colleges typically get it from the school aid fund. The higher education generally comes from the general fund.
But it would be the 4-year, the U of M, MSU, Saginaw Valley, Grand Valley,
So
that type. So Washtenaw, Lansing community would still receive the funding.
interesting.
I mean, I'm an advocate for higher education. I also am an advocate for those that don't choose higher education, but instead want to get into the union trades and apprenticeship situations. There should be a multitude of opportunities for our students, when they're reaching adulthood, the different paths that they can choose for themselves. But I think funding our higher education is a important thing because the cost of college has grown out of hand. I don't think at the state budget level that we can really solve it, but we would definitely be hurting it if we were to cut our funding to those.
I just think by freeing that money up, we can actually focus on a better K through 12 education.
So you would redirect the funds, not just remove the...
Right.
Yeah,
so
okay.
with that, and I understand that making every 4-year institute private is not going to happen.
Right.
Realistically, that's not going to happen in my lifetime.
Right.
But I would redirect those funds to, K through 12 and the community colleges as well.
Okay. Are you good?
Yeah, as far as, because I don't have a whole lot of things that I'm looking to cut in the expenditures, only because I am moving forward on the assumption that the waste has been eliminated during the 8 years when those in power said they wanted to eliminate.
Yeah, you got to pick a place to stand to operate from, so that makes sense.
So I can recognize where I would like to see more investment, but I can't point to anything and say, we're spending too much money on that because I don't have the insight to believe so. It'd just be an assumption.
And mind you, if I get elected, I understand that my position on some of these things might change. And
Once you get in the room,
right.
context.
And if they do, I would be more than happy to share that fact. I changed my, like, hey,
Yeah.
I said this. When I got more of the information, my view changed, and I'd be happy to pass that along.
So that's a perfect segue to the next topic, which is minimum wage, which is a tough one.
Yeah.
I've heard some really interesting positions on this particular topic, and I go back and forth because I can see them all clearly. So who wants to go first?
Well, minimum wage is not meant to be a living wage, just as a starting point. So, and personally, I just don't want to raise it, at least not change with how Michigan.
Do you want to keep it, get rid of it?
My ideal,
Yes.
which I know would be a political suicide and
Yeah.
probably not going to happen, is I'd get rid of it. But I'm not against keeping the minimum wage like what we have now, which is supposed to go up with inflation,
Yeah.
with no politics involved.
Okay.
Out of curiosity, what do you think the outcome, the end would be if you were to eliminate it?
Honestly, I think more jobs entry-level jobs, so like cashiers at McDonald's type of jobs would open up. But that's about it.
And the individuals working these, do you think that that it would be good for society?
The people taking with expectation that they want to move up so they can make an actual living, yes.
But if you're not creating more jobs that are middle-class jobs or the higher up the ladder, you just get a whole bunch more people at the bottom, and they're all fighting, and it's who's the most desperate. Okay, you're the most desperate, so I'm going to pay you the least. This other person wasn't quite as desperate. They wanted $5 an hour. You were willing to do it for $4, so you're going to get $4. That person who wanted $5 is now out of luck, and it's you have a power discrepancy when it comes to employers and employees. The employees don't know how much value they are actually generating for the entity. And so if the employer in theory knows, okay, I need, this much staffing in order to generate, to provide the services and generate the revenue. All I think the outcome would be is a drastic increase in profits for those businesses. They would be able to put a lot of downward pressure on wages to say, hey, if you don't want to take this cut, this other person on the street is willing to work for even less. And so, yes, those individuals working those jobs right now, they want to move up the ladder, but it's not like there's opportunities for everybody to move up the ladder. We are in a system where the middle class has shrunk because not enough middle class jobs exist. So if you're then not going to have room for them to grow to, but also cut out the bottom where then they have a lot of room to fall, that's all that's going to happen for the outcome of more profits for the business owner.
Okay. This is how I see it happening. So we get rid of the minimum wage, which opens up more jobs for people to gain experience. Let's use me. I then go to my boss, say, hey, I want a raise, or I can get this other job that's paying more. Your choice. So you kind of take the power back a little bit more.
A, that assumes there's another job that's paying more. B, it assumes that you're not expendable and just, bring in the next person who's willing to work for that little amount.
In every job you're expendable. So let's be honest.
All right, so let me put forth my proposal for the minimum wage. I would like to see a tiered minimum wage where it starts out, because, as a general philosophy, I think anybody working minimum wage full-time should be earning enough income that they no longer need government assistance. Because if they are going to qualify for government assistance while they are working full-time, then all that means is us as taxpayers are subsidizing the employer and their profits. And they didn't pay the worker enough. So we as taxpayers had to step in and kick in. So that way then, the employer. Now, are there jobs out there that would be eliminated if you increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour? Yes. But those jobs are in theory then not creating $15 in value for the business. If the job itself is integral to the business where it is needed in order for it to operate, and its existence then is generating enough to justify a $15 an hour cost of labor, it's going to continue to exist. If it isn't bringing in that value, then it's going to go away, and that's a shame. But we shouldn't want jobs to exist that are so little in value creation to a company that it also then requires us as taxpayers to be subsidizing it. I don't see the net benefit to society from those existing. I would rather it be that, okay, you're working minimum wage full-time, you're guaranteed an income that is going to give you enough to survive on. I would like to see a two-tier, though, where you start out, the minimum wage is, let's say, $14. And then it's after either 30 days employment or 100 hours worked that it jumps up to 15. So you have that interim period of the employee is learning the job, is gaining value to the company, and the company is able to evaluate the employee. Is this actually somebody that I want to continue to have work for me, and all those things. At the end of it, after a month or 100 hours worked, the employer has some incentive to fire that person to hire the next person at 14, but not really. I mean, do they want to go through the hassle of bringing in a new employee and having to train them? They front load a lot of their labor costs of resources on new employees. So they don't have an incentive to go out and get a new employee just for a temporary, dollar cheaper salary. At the same time, the employee, they get recognized immediately. Okay, you've earned this. You've already got a promotion. You've made it past your interim period. I think that's a healthier system. I think it's a good middle ground of figuring out, okay, what is an appropriate second tier for minimum wage, and then have the entry level tier $1 beneath that, and just as a trial period.
And you're pegging that also to inflation over time.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, see, the problem I have with that is, though these minimum wage jobs are supposed to give individuals experience, they're not designed. If I go to McDonald's, I can expect to start on the lowest level, right? And I got to have that drive to want to improve myself. If I don't, I shouldn't be making more money than so. You understand what I'm trying? Or I'm going with that?
But that has a lot more faith that the status quo is a true meritocracy, where if you just put in hard work, you're going to be rewarded. I
understand that hard work doesn't guarantee results, but you are not going to have results without the hard work. So, I get that. I'm not living in a fairyland.
But if it's a job that you want to see exist, like that cashier at McDonald's, if you, as just the customer, you would rather see somebody working there behind the cash rather than having to use a computer, wouldn't you want that individual to be making enough money that they are not also living on government assistance and barely struggling to survive? Like, I don't want to come across anybody in my day-to-day life where they provide value to me as just a member of the community. I'm going to the store, I'm buying whatever, I'm happy to see them there. I don't want to see anybody who is not living at least on a sustenance level of income. I just that is not the community I want to live in.
See, if somebody's providing value to me, then I have a responsibility to be charitable to them, which is something I strive for. Like last time I went to McDonald's, one of the cashiers came up and helped me. I gave him $5, which was more than what he was worth to me. But
that's like a tipping society.
Yes.
And I almost want to do this again because my head is popping now with what about part-time versus full-time? Because I know plenty of people that are working like 3 part-time jobs. Yeah. They're getting in their 40 hours, but not in one place. But yeah, so in the interest of we are now out of time, I feel like you should both have the opportunity to say some parting thing. So who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I'll
right.
just say that, I had a great time. I think this is worthwhile for the voters. Anybody who is observing this and going to see both of us on the ballot, I think they'll be able to make a much more informed decision, at least about choosing between us. Sadly, our other opponent is not here. It'd be nice if she was.
Yeah, I'd agree that I'd love to see our Republican opponent in this room with us. And, I really thoroughly enjoyed this. It kind of got me to know you a little bit better and kind of helped me develop what's going on in my head a little bit. So there was a lot of value here.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks.